humility was a real gift at the end of the day. I could look at other people and say, what would you do if you were in my shoes? It was entirely appropriate to look at many leaders who were older than me, most who had more experience, and ask for their help in a really genuine way. These steps that I've written about in People Matter at Work was like this dream that I had in my head, which was, what if we could create a place where people love to work? Not just because it had free granola bars and yogurt, but because they had an opportunity to be connected to the mission.
I just think we miss this one all the time. First off, I think there's more information we can share than we give any credit for, and there's sort of no reason to hold on to most of that information. But then transparent about where people stand. It's transparent about what I'm worried about as a leader, so you know how to help me with those problems. I just think we're leaving that, and we get so much more engagement.
I think it makes me a better leader to not just be thinking about them, but to be thinking about their children, because I want to lead them in such a way that they're able to go home and raise their children in a home that's safe, seen, successful, and ultimately they grow up and have fond feelings toward work.
There is no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth. Yet the big leaps are how careers are made and how businesses excel. So how do you master not knowing it all or feeling like an imposter? How do you have the conversations that lead to trust and, of course, excellence? How do you take charge of the things that you can control? How do you thrive outside your comfort zone? That's what this podcast is about. I'm your host, Wanda Wallace, and it's time to get out of your comfort zone. Welcome to the conversation. Now, you know that I often talk about the importance of people who work for you feeling that you care for them as human beings, so that they feel that they matter for more than just the output that they produce for you. If you don't get that right, I believe you can't give effective feedback. You're not holding anybody accountable. You're certainly not going to build deep engagement, and you're certainly not going to get trust. Now, I've been saying that for years now on this podcast, nothing new. Today, though, we're going to take a different angle. We're going to talk to a leader who happens to also believe that, and more importantly, has lived it, done it, made it work in his organization, still is making it work in his organization. And we're going to hear both his story, a massive out of the comfort zone story, as well as his philosophy for what it means to leave people feeling that they really matter. So my guest today is Josh Block. He's a native of Michigan in the U.S., a husband, father of two, a leadership advocate, and more importantly for us, he's the author of People Matter at Work. This is about his journey over the last 15 years, helping to shape a thriving high-performance culture at an organization called Block Imaging, which was initially a family-run business for 12 years, and in the last 3 years has been an affiliate of Siemens Health Engineers and Common Spirit Health. So the company has gone from 50 employees to 400 globally. They've gone from 30 million in revenue to 215 in revenue. And still, even with the acquisition under Siemens and Global Health, they're still maintaining this same philosophy that Josh started with. So we have a great story. Stay tuned. Josh, welcome to the conversation. It's delightful to be talking to you.
Good to be with you, Wanda.
Okay, I'm excited. So I have to set the out of the comfort zone story first, because I think that's an interesting piece, and I think it leads into your philosophy about leadership. But let me start. So you're working in a family-owned business, and it's owned by your father, just to lay all the cards on the table, and you're a sales rep. Okay,
right.
And there are 50 employees. And overnight, as in literally over the weekend, Friday to Monday, you go from being a sales rep to being CEO. Tell us the story.
Yeah, out of the
what
comfort
happened?
zone. Yeah, out of the comfort zone's a perfect title. But I was actually, our family had just relocated from Indiana to Michigan 4 months prior, and it was a Saturday evening. I was at a colleague's house. They had invited us over for a dinner gathering. Jason Crawford was there, who was the president of our parts and service subsidiary. And my dad gave him a call during dinner. Long story short, we find ourselves in the backyard, and I knew they had had a conversation, but I just said to him, what did he say? And little did Jason know, little did I know, that Jason shared that Dad would be stepping down from his role on Monday and that he'd be naming me company president at the beginning of next week. And I was 29 years old and a $30 million organization, and it was definitely an out-of-the-comfort zone moment.
And more importantly, you have siblings that are who are older than you that are working in the company.
Yeah, so
And
I three brothers, two older and one younger.
they weren't named as CEO. So how did that work out on the family dinner table?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had some brief conversations over the course of that weekend and about giftings and roles, and each one of us led in different ways, and two of them are still at the company to this day. And so yeah, it was a situation where I'm really thankful that each of my brothers were so supportive as we've really sought to submit to strengths and protect each other's weaknesses.
Okay. All right. So were you reluctant or were you excited about grabbing this opportunity?
I think I had imagined that someday I might be a part of leading the company into the next generation, definitely not in this way or at this speed. And so I think there was some excitement that I was passionate about leadership and passionate about people and work. And of course, there was some inferiority, some insecurity, and what has oftentimes become known like the imposter syndrome is a word that we use today. But I'm sure I was feeling some of that at the time.
So seriously, so it's Monday morning. I'm imagining Saturday night, there might have been a little elation. Oh, this is great. This is really cool. But Monday morning, you're walking in the office and all eyeballs are looking at you. When did you have a moment of panic saying, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah, I think the moment Saturday night was a moment of panic. I think there were a lot of minutes in that night that I was staring at the ceiling and thinking about what the weeks and months ahead would require of me. And so there was kind of one sleepless night, and then Monday morning it was game time. You're put into the batter's box, and it's time to swing. And so as I looked at the 50 people, the first step was to meet with each one of them. So over the next couple of weeks, meeting with each individual and kind of hearing what's going on in their story, what was their response, which people are all across the board when a leader transitions like that, to begin building trust.
Okay. That's interesting. And it's with a size of 50 employees, it's imaginable that you could talk to all 50 of them, but those are long days really quickly to get through that many people. And I think about leaders who are in part of an organization where you've got 50 to 100, that you can begin to start to reach many of those people if you just think carefully about it. I hope somewhere along the line.
Starting, obviously, it wasn't all done on that first Monday, but over the next 4 weeks, kind of starting with those who I either thought were most concerned or potentially resistant, and then working our way over those kind of 4 weeks to those who were maybe less resistant.
Yeah. You say in the book that you didn't know, so this is imaging technology, that you didn't know how to turn the machine on. You know how to sell it, but you didn't know how to turn it on,
Sure.
let alone how to build it and a whole bunch of other things.
Oh, I to this day, it would be laughable if the engineers saw either Jason Crawford, who's now our CEO, or myself trying to work on or repair. There was so much I didn't know, not just in the imaging space, but in the human resource space and in the information technology and accounting. And we had an office in Japan and France that I knew very little about at the time of the transition.
Right. And you've also said you knew little about finance. I mean, you had a few clues, but not a deep dive on the finances of this business. So you didn't know what you were really truly walking in for.
Yeah, when I became president, I had not seen a profit and loss statement for this business, a cash flow statement, and had again, I was focused on selling every day. It ended up being key that there were some things I knew about the equipment and about our customers and things like that, but there was more that I didn't know than there was that I did.
Okay, all right. I want to talk for a moment because one of the challenges, everybody taking over a big job, like there's two challenges. One is, how do I get myself out of that imposter syndrome, panic, anxiety state and get on with doing the job? And usually that involves admitting that I don't know something and getting
Sure.
other people to do it. But there's also the rest of the organization. So you're 29, not a whole lot of experience, though some experience leading a business from your college years. Okay, getting everybody who's been in the company for 20 whatever years to say, oh yeah, he's going to be a great leader and I want to
Yeah.
work here. So how did you handle those two?
Yeah, I think for myself, there's a chapter in People Matter at Work called "The Gift of Humility," and I don't think I don't think my 29-year-old self would have been like, "Oh, I really would like to have humility." Looking back 15 years later, like what a gift it was to, in the way that it led us to work together, and the way that it allowed us to raise and celebrate other people's strengths was really powerful. So humility was a real gift at the end of the day, and then the other piece was people following. I think of these sorts of situations on a spectrum, that you have a few people who are excited almost no matter what, change is great. This is going to be awesome. Yeah. And I'm friends with Josh or whatever it is. And then you have some people who are close with my dad and more on the resistant side, and who actually several were not able to make it across from my dad's leadership to my own. And then you're kind of fighting for the middle, right? Yeah. Over the next 2 to 5 years, trying to not convince them, but really invite them into a vision that we were after as an organization.
Right. In some ways, I think you're right. I love the chapter on the gift of humility, or that whole section on the gift of humility. When the transition happens so dramatically from one day to the next, it's so clear to everybody that you don't have the experience in the depth of the organization. You kind of have no choice other than to say, you're right, I don't know. I'm hoping you do. There is a gift in that, as opposed to you've been prepping for 2 years for the role, and now you're supposed to know, but nobody ever knows.
It really was. It's not a tongue-in-cheek chapter. It really is this idea that the way that I could look at other people and say, what would you do if you were in my shoes? In a really authentic way, as opposed to, oh, I've been planning this for 5 years and these are the next 12 steps we're going to take and here's the game plan. It was entirely appropriate to look at many leaders who were older than me, most who had more experience, and ask for their help in a really genuine way.
Right. Yeah. I secretly believe when people help craft where we're going, they're far more bought in. Even if you own the final go, no-go decision,
Certainly.
They're far more bought in than any other brilliance of a strategy you could lay out. And I think that's true in the middle of the organization. I think it's all the way to the top of the organization.
Beautifully said. I totally agree.
Okay. All right. Were there any secrets beyond that in convincing people that they wanted to go along with you?
I think, I don't know if there are any secrets. For us, a couple of years in, we established the mission of People Matter. So that was a key moment. And I think that organizational identities can be incredibly powerful in becoming magnets and in really driving the best organizations forward. So I'd say that was a key moment, was these two words, People Matter, which have lived for many, many years, became the title of the book. But that core mission was really impactful in shaping who we've become as a company.
Yeah. And for those listeners who are interested, Josh does a great job of unfolding why the People Matter was so important to him from some earlier stories. You should read the book, though, because it just says an awful lot about the early formative years for you and how that shaped your leadership in the future. I'll leave that dangler. People Matter @work if you want to get the story. All right, I want to dig into the philosophy behind People Matter. So lots of people say that. Not many organizations or leaders really, truly pull it off. You have some very explicit steps. So walk us through how this all really works.
Sure. So it started with a vision, right? These steps that I've written about in People Matter at Work was a reverse engineering of a vision that we sought to embody imperfectly, but intently. Was like this dream that I had in my head, which was, what if we could create a place where people love to work? And not just because it had free granola bars and yogurt, but because like they had an opportunity to be connected to the mission, and they felt safe, seen, and successful, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment. And they brought their best, not because they had to or because of a bunch of pressure, but because they wanted to, because they really respected the leader and felt connected to the mission. And so that's where the vision started. And then after practicing it day after day after day, looking back and seeing that there were 3 T's that really felt significant in the way that we sought to close the gap between the leader I want to be and what people actually experience in the workplace.
Okay. I love that, because I happen to believe most strategies are developed retrospectively. When you look backwards, you can say, oh, those were the steps that worked. You don't often understand them that explicitly in the journey. Even still, it's an interesting set of three. So tell me how this all works.
Yeah, so the first, as we talked about the gift of humility, when you don't know, there is just a necessity of working together. And when I think about that first T, together, it's sharpening any decision of consequence. And sometimes it's the beginning of a decision, sometimes it's the end. One of my favorites is when a decision's like 90% baked and you bring some people in to help just hone that last 10%. And so together's the first, is sharpening any decision of consequence by working together with people inside and outside of your organization. The second is to make thoughtful decisions. And that was a word that just burned within me, my 29-year-old self. And in my mid-30s, I looked up the definition, and it kind of took the wind, like it gave me some excitement around like careful consideration of the needs of others. And so not just being careful consideration for the business or careful consideration for myself, but those on the other side. And then the last T is transparent. There's so many people who start with just sharing the absolute minimum. And I think that we can start on the other side, which is to share as much as possible with people, from strategy all the way to feedback loops on their own performance. So together, thoughtful and transparent are really the three T's that get the we cycle started.
Okay. So step back, we cycle. What do you mean by we cycle?
Yeah, when I started leading in this vision for creating a place where people love to work, I began to ask myself, why aren't most organizations like this? I mean, what is missing? What is driving them? And so I just have coined the term the me cycle, that when bosses look out for themselves, employees return the favor, and it just becomes this toxic, cannibalistic, transactional culture. And when we flip it on its head, employees become team members, bosses become leaders, and we begin to focus on we instead of me. Very reminiscent of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of starting with the end in mind and moving toward interdependence. And so the we cycle is just the flipping where we're looking out for the team's looking out for the leaders in the organization. And I think it's a better way to lead, and it's a healthier culture for everyone to be a part of.
Yeah, I can see that one. Okay, let's go through the three T's then that start this we cycle. So as a leader, you're thinking together. You're being thoughtful, which means careful consideration of the needs of others, deliberate careful consideration,
Yeah.
And then transparent. I want to spend some time on transparent, but I'm starting with together. Okay, so most of the time, I see leaders who are afraid to come to the team and say, I don't know, I don't have a vision, I don't have the answer, because we genuinely believe as leaders I'm supposed to have the answer. Which makes it really difficult to do it together. The best way I can do it together is, here's what I think, does that sound okay to you? Which is not really a very together part. So give me an example about how you did the together and made it really come alive.
Yeah, I mean, instead of coming to the table with, this is what I think we need to do, I like to emphasize the problem, which is, this is what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about this area of the business, or I'm concerned about, revenue growth, or I'm concerned about the way the team is operating in our receivables area, or something like that, is to raise a concern and then invite the team into solving that concern, is how I oftentimes see together take place. And I think there's two ends of the spectrum. There's the dictator leader who walks in and says, this is where we're going, I don't care what any of you think. And then you have the democratic leader who's afraid to make a decision, and they really want everybody to be on board, which becomes very slow and arduous. And so I think there's a middle ground in together, which is, I'm not a dictator, and yet I'm not advocating my leadership to the team either. I'm leveraging other people's knowledge and intellect in order to give us some direction. And as you said earlier, when people weigh in, they buy in. And so you spend a lot less time trying to convince people, because we actually created it and collaborated together.
Yeah. I see so many times leaders two things. Let me just start with this one. I think it's perfectly okay to get great team buy-in because we've had a discussion about what we should do or what the options are or the consequences of any choices that we're considering, and still have the leader say, it's my decision. Like, I go A or I go B, but everybody will weigh in. I'm curious about your view on that. Do you think that's good or not good?
Yeah, I would say it's our decision. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to solidify, and there may be a time that we have 6 of 7 on the same page. But when we collaborate together and we sharpen and we hone, there were not a lot of times in our leadership team where 4 people were on one side and 3 were on the other. It just didn't work that way. Is that if 6 people were all in agreement and one person was resistant, you better listen to that person, because if they're willing to stand up to these other 6 people, there's probably some
Something
depth
there.
and meaning there. And then once we hear them out, we ultimately finalize a decision. So I would say that I really would challenge, well, at the end of the day, I am going to guide the decision. I look at it as we take ownership of the decision.
Right, right. So that's people weighing in very strongly, even though you say, okay, time to make a decision or time to move forward.
Sure.
All right. Let's talk well, I guess I should ask you to say a few words about thoughtful. How do you know if you've been thoughtful or not?
Well, I think the shift from the golden rule to the platinum rule, the golden rule being treat others as I'd like to be treated, platinum being treat others as they'd like to be treated, is you have to know people. You have to not only be aware of what drives them and what energizes and what's going on in their life. So I think that's a piece of it. I think moving at the pace of people and understanding that their lives exist outside of the workplace, these whole people. And so for me, it's how we build trust. But ultimately, will I make a decision that takes the other person's needs, concerns, hopes, dreams, whatever it is, into the equation is so important.
Okay, so stay with this pace of people and give the pitch to everybody out there who's listening, who thinks that you have to be willing to give, 125% of yourself in order to stay at this job and be at this level, and who thinks that pace, and it's not moving fast enough. So give us your pitch.
Well, ultimately, it's, do you believe that leadership is about accomplishing things through other people, or that what got you into leadership, and it's one of the challenges we see all the time, is that I was really efficient. I moved really fast. I was super productive, and they carry that into leadership and begin to think that them carrying it all is really the way to do it, as opposed to working together and spreading the burden across a team. And so when I think of moving at the pace of people, I think of, in a one-on-one, asking what's on people's mind and really caring about them beyond the workplace. That's what I think of when I think of moving at the pace of people, and really knowing what's going on in their life and their family, I think is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir on that one for me. There's nothing else you're going to get done if people don't believe that you care about them. You'll get output, but that's about it. Sure. Okay, so I want to come to the last T. So we've got together, put the concern on the table and invite people to help solve, and be sure you're listening to different points of view, especially the 1 out of 6 that is dissenting. That's just something you got to consider. Then we've got thoughtful. I'm taking other people's needs and concerns and ambitions and desires into factoring in when I make decisions.
Yeah,
Last one I want to talk about is transparent. I think transparent is the thing we leave on the table all the time, and we miss it. And I'm going to come back to, we all talk about trust and how important trust is and so on. One of the biggest things happening at moment, Mercer's data, is that among people today, fairness is one of the top 2 factors for choosing an employer and staying at an employer. And especially so for younger generations. I think it's true for everybody, but it's especially true for younger generations. Then you have to say, well, how do I get fairness? Well, fairness only comes because people are being transparent. I can't judge that it was fair or not fair if there isn't transparency. And I just think we've gotten in a habit of, you don't need to know because you don't have a particular pay grade. And we don't tell people what's really going on. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I want to hear your pitch on why transparency really matters.
Yeah, I think that we talk about the phrase knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a phrase that we've all heard since we were young. And so lack of knowledge is disempowering. So just this idea of how many of us want to get in a car that someone else is driving and not know where we're going. I mean, and you think you're going north and you keep seeing them turn south, and it's confusing and it's disempowering. And the first thing you want to do when you think a car is going one way that it's not supposed to be going, or frankly, you have no idea where it's going, is to grab for the handle and get out of the car, right? And so I think transparent, again, from a very macro level, like what's going on in the business, all the way down to people's individual performance feedback. I just think transparency is a gift to people. And if you ask most people in most organizations globally, they are going to say they wish they knew more about what their boss was thinking.
I don't think there's a person who's actually interested in more than just collecting a paycheck who would not like to know what their boss is thinking and what the priorities are for the boss and how can I contribute to that one. Okay, so you said transparent in feedback. Explain how that, so transparent with an individual about where they stand in feedback. How about transparent across teams?
Yeah, I think it starts at, there are three questions I talk about in the book, which is that people want to know what's going on. People want to know what the leader is thinking about. And that spans a whole bunch of different areas. And then the last is what's the leader thinking about them? And so, yeah, I think it's to teams. I heard someone recently, I was actually shipping a book out and I walked into our parts area and I heard one of our leaders say to their team, I'd like us to get back to doing XYZ in the way that we did it last year. Such a powerful visionary statement in a piece of feedback that like, hey, we've kind of lost our way. And instead of picking on you or instead of telling you that you're all doing it wrong, I actually want us to go back to the way we were doing it 1 year ago. It was one of my favorite transparent moments in the last couple of weeks.
So I explain what it is I'm really looking for. I just think we miss this one all the time. First off, I think there's more information we can share than we give any credit for. And there's sort of no reason to hold on to most of that information. Okay, if there's a regulatory issue, maybe there's some issues we kind of can't expose. But then transparent about where people stand, transparent about what's going to really make a difference, transparent about what I'm worried about as a leader, so you know how to help me with those problems. I just think we're leaving that, and we get so much more engagement if we would pick it up.
I think we kind of passive and we have aggressive. We have like, we're going to be nice. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I want to protect their comfort and my own comfort. And then eventually resentment builds and I get frustrated and then I lay into the person, whether it be in a performance assessment or whether it be letting someone go. And I like how Patrick Lencioni says that firing someone oftentimes is the last act of cowardice. And so I think rather than passive and aggressive, there's just like clear and kind, as Brene Brown talks about, is just to be totally honest, but doing it not because I'm in control and I have authority, but doing it because I believe in the person that you can become with this feedback. And it makes feedback muscles grow for the leader and for the team, and feedback becomes something we all look forward to rather than dread.
Yeah. We don't want to, we all know the performance, year-end performance, where the boss had to think of something to say to justify the rating that he or she just gave you because he or she had to give you some at any rate. We know that formula, and it does nobody any good. That's not the kind of feedback that's ever going to improve performance, make all of us better. All right, I want to flip. So we've got what the leader does, which is the 3 T's. Think together, be thoughtful in your decisions, and be transparent, both in what you're thinking, where you're trying to go, and in what you think of people. You follow that with the next, which is a 3S, which I think is most interesting. So explain the 3S.
Yeah, so what we all want to know, what happens if we do this, right? If I parent in this way, or if I lead in this way, or I work out in this way. And so what happens when we lead with the 3 T's is that we create a culture where people feel safe, seen, and successful. And those are, if you kind of reverse engineer Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's what you're going to find from bottom to top is actually safe, seen, and successful. And so that's just how I've seen people respond. Not perfectly, not every time. Some people don't want to be part of a healthy organization, and everybody has their own story of how they got to this place as well. But I do believe, generally speaking, when we lead with people matter at the forefront, and with the 3 T's being embodied moment by moment, day by day, we start to see people feel safe, seen, and successful.
Okay, so we know safe. We know the work of Amy Edmondson, the psychological safe. I can tell you what I think. I can speak my mind. I can disagree, and it's not going to come back to haunt me in some way. All right, and we all want to feel successful because we all want to feel like we're on a winning team. Like, now, who wants to be on a failing team? That's not what, and it doesn't mean that we're like ambitious. It just means it feels better to be succeeding. I know why I believe seen is important, but I want to know what you think about seen.
It might be my favorite. I mean, you can't have a favorite child, but at the end of the day, this piece that there are leaders who look into a mirror and what they see is their own reflection, and then there are leaders who look through a window and they see others. And a friend of mine who was gracious enough to endorse the book, Dr. Kurt Thompson, says we all come into the world looking for someone looking for us. And so, people won't articulate it in this way, like, people just want to know that they matter, and the way that they know that they matter is when we see their needs and we see them as whole people.
Yeah. I think so. I agree with you. So I think safe is important. Of course, we've got to have successful or we're not going to be here for long. Okay. But I agree with you. That seen piece, seen is the part that says, you're listening to me. My opinion matters. What I do makes a difference around here. I'm a part of this. I count. It's like that whole, I'm in this. I'm a piece of this, as opposed to I'm on the outside looking in. And I just think I hit so many motivation pieces right there in one word, seen.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And I think I just can't talk enough about the personal lives of people. And some people would say, well, keep it professional. And I just signed 150 books for team members last week, and we had kind of a cereal buffet where people got to pick their favorite cereal. And I just remember each person standing with them, and ideally there was a personal story that I knew. And some of them were really hard and really tragic, and some of them, they had just had a baby or whatever it was. I just think, man, that to just keep it in the workplace, these are whole people. They're taking work home with them and they're bringing family life to work with them. And man, the more we're able to engage and understand and connect with people, and frankly, I think it makes me a better leader to not just be thinking about them, but to be thinking about their children, because I want to lead them in such a way that they're able to go home and raise their children in a home that's safe, seen, successful, and ultimately they grow up and have fond feelings toward work, because it's what they're going to do with a lot of their adult lives.
I love that. We never do think about that way, is how somebody is treated at work and what that says is then going to happen or not happen in their home life. And not, if they go home frustrated or angry, it's going to spill out in one way or another in their home life. And we all know the consequences of that, whether it's just internal stress and therefore burnout, or whether it's something else that's not terribly productive. Okay, Now we've got the 3 T's: together, thoughtful, transparent. We've got, as a result, you get employees or people who are safe, seen, and successful. And the net result is we get...
When people feel safe, seen, and successful, trust builds, and ownership deepens, and we're all looking for ownership, right? That's such a big deal. Right. And then generosity blossoms. And so generosity, when I think of that, I think of they give back. These are people who don't just give the minimum and leave as fast as they can, but they really invest, and they care for customers, and they take risks, and they bring creative solutions to bear. They act like owners and give back. And so that trust, ownership, and generosity is what becomes the end of the we cycle, but ultimately perpetuates and encourages leaders to keep leading with the 3 T's.
All right. So everybody is talking about every talk I give, every company I go into, every coaching engagement I have. The answer is, you have to increase trust, okay? And I don't disagree with that. Increasing trust gets you a lot of good things. The problem is we never talk about what does it take to increase trust. What do I need to be doing to increase trust? And what I like about your formula is you just told me what I need to be doing to increase trust.
Yeah, be trustworthy. That's the ultimately, right?
I'm trustworthy. Of course I'm trustworthy. Just trust me. I'm not going to tell you anything about what's going on. I'm not going to be transparent. I'm not going to really take you into consideration and the impact on you. And I'm not going to really let you weigh in on the decision, but trust me.
Yeah, and there's trust, which is like the basic level of trust, which is that I am a person of integrity. But I think the elevated trust, or 2.0, is how would Wanda feel if she were listening in to our leaders' conversations when she wasn't there? Like, would we look out for her? Do we care? Like, again, if you had team members and they were listening to the executive dialogues, would trust increase or would trust reduce? Would they feel more cared for, safe, seen, and successful, or would they feel less? That's a real test of whether we're trustworthy leaders.
Yeah. There's an issue of transparency.
Yeah.
Could you release the recordings of your executive team performance?
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Because if you could, then you're probably in the right spot. What else, other advice do you have from people for anybody who wants to go down this journey of a people matter kind of culture?
Yeah, I think I would just encourage people that so often when you read a leadership book, the offer, the invitation can be, I just need to do more. I just need to work harder. And I would say, I don't think that's the case. I actually think the 3 T's allow you to lead with an intentionality that then builds up people, has them bring their best, and actually lightens the load for the leader. That this is supposed to spread the burden. It's not to put more bricks in your backpack. So that's probably my hope for leaders, is it's not just do more, run harder, and lift as much as you can.
Well, besides, if I create a place where people really want to work, they stay, they say good things, they do the right things, they do a little bit more. I have fewer problems to solve. I have fewer customers who are leaving. I have customers who stick around longer. I don't have as many hiring costs. I don't have as many hiring meetings as I need to go through. The litany goes on.
Yes.
And we forget those costs.
So well said. So people take ownership, and when they take ownership, we get to spread it across us, as opposed to us being on one side, them being on the other side, and us just kind of heaping work over to them, and them resenting us resenting them. And yeah, I think it really does. All of those things you shared, from retention to customer care to creative ideas, I think some really amazing. I mean, our story, right? We've gone from 30 million to 215 million. Performance has not suffered. Performance has actually been an outflow of our care for people. That's
the important message. And that's what's so cool. I mean, I love the model. I think the model holds true. But what you can do is to say, I actually have led this way, and the results back it up. And by the way, if you read the book, there are lovely testimonials from people who work in the organization who say, oh yeah, this is what Josh does. Let me tell you the story about how he did this. So there's sort of like a moment of real check-in to make sure that it's not just all nice words, it's actually how it's happening. So I think that's really cool. Yeah, people matter.
They do. Matter. They are so worth it every time.
All right. So I'm going to repeat. People matter. The way Josh has done this in his organization is by starting as a leader together at every single turn, put the concern on the table, not the answer, and invite people to help you solve it. Okay. Or to sharpen it, to improve. Thoughtful in that I want to be considerate about the impact of whatever decision I'm making on the needs of other people. Personal decisions, life decisions, work decisions, thoughtful. And then lastly is transparent. Share. More information, not less. More information again, and more information. What are you thinking? What's going on? What do you think of people? So it becomes a feedback loop. For that, you get people who feel safe, seen, and successful. That means that they are going to then be willing to generously give back. So we have engagement taken care of. We have creativity taken care of. They're going to be feel like owners. So we have accountability taken care of. And more importantly, that's where trust becomes a reinforcing cycle as opposed to a negative declining cycle. How'd I do, Josh?
That's great. You should teach this. We're ready for a franchise already.
Sounds good. I love it, Josh. It's a great story. I really highly recommend the book. Many, many, many stories in there that you can tag onto. And the book is called People Matter at Work. Josh, if somebody wanted to find you, where's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, peoplematteratwork.com is a great starting point, as well as anywhere on social media. Josh Block, People Matter at Work, and then they can pick up the book on Amazon or anywhere books are sold.
Fabulous. I love it, Josh. Thank you very much for being a guest today. I love the conversation.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Wanda.
And join us next week for another episode on Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone. If you want to watch this conversation, please check out our YouTube channel at Out of the Comfort Pod and leave us a comment either on outofthecomfortzone.com or anywhere else you can find us. We'd love to hear from you all the time. And until then, see you next week.